Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing El Jugador in the 5 minute pool on ICC, the player in Spanish. And he is from España, from the looks of his flag. Alright, so we're playing e4 once again, and I think I'm going to go with a Ruy, but I'm not going to play the exchange variation this time. I'm going to play it proper with bishop a4. No exchange variation. Even though I'm not totally comfortable with these lines, we're still going to do it. Okay, let's go c3. If they take e4, then d4 is coming. I really must confess that I don't know these lines, but that's part of getting better in chess, is pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Let's actually play h3 just to stop any bishop g4 unpleasantness. Note that they can't take on e4 because this time I have bishop d5, forking the two knights. Very common Ruy Lopez trick that everyone should know. So he paused for a moment, so that makes me think my move was not the theoretical move. Now I'll play rook e1. Still, knight takes e4 was not possible, but this is a useful move in the future. I would expect black to probably play rook e8, whereupon e takes d4 maybe in the offing later. I'm much more used to this position with the bishop on e7 versus b6, because that's what I play from the black side. Maybe now I can play bishop e3 and then look to play knight bd2. That's a possibility. Yeah, or I could play for d5, but I kind of like bishop e3. So once again, taking advantage of the fact that this pawn is not truly hanging. If I had played knight bd2 directly, then I would be losing contact with this guy. So let's do this instead. The pawn on h3 is helpful because black has no knight g4 to work with. Okay, so they're taking. I presume I'm going to take with the pawn. But are they going to play rook e8 then? Something to that effect? I don't think I should be bothered by this. If knight a5, I just have bishop c2. Knight b4. Okay, knight b4. That's a possibly good move. We'll see. Maybe e5 in reply. Pawn takes, knight takes, attacking f7, although d4 hangs. I might have to force the play a little bit here, because the knight coming in here is pesky. I could play queen b1. Tricky looking move. Queen b1. Yeah, actually I kind of like queen b1. That seems to kill two birds with one stone. Defend the pawn, defend the d3 square. Okay, so black plays c5. I could play a3, try to force him back. I could take. a3 seems natural. If a3, c4, a takes b4, c takes b3, that should be good for white. Yeah, let's do this. Just kick that knight back where it came from. El Jugador is up a little bit on the clock, so let's bear that in mind. Taking c5 or playing d5. d5 looks correct, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to close the center. My bishop is no longer well placed here, but I can reroute it. Yeah, let's play bishop c2. I expect them to maybe play for c4 at some stage, or maybe they're going to go for f5 instead. Possibly I can play g4 and try to stop f5, or at the very least discourage it. f5 would break up my pawns, wouldn't it? I could play bishop f4, maybe looking to attack d6. How about that? Yeah, let's play bishop f4. Bishop c7 maybe to defend? I would much prefer if these two pieces were switched around. My queen in front of the bishop, so I could play e5 and create a mating net, a mating attack on h7. But this is not fantasy chess. You have to play in accordance with the demands of the position. Queen b8, that looks odd. Now I kind of want to pull this bishop back to h2 for some reason. It seems a little exposed. Like I think black's going to play knight g6 with tempo shortly. Yeah, let's do that. They could try for f5, but f5 looks exceedingly risky for black. Yeah, so they're choosing a more normal path, I would say. So let's come here. Now I don't think f5 will be happening anytime soon. I'm going to try to send this knight to either e3 or g3. Probably e3 so it doesn't block the dark square bishop. I still think black might want to try for c4 to try to open this dark square bishop. But my knight coming to e3 will be helpful. Hopefully into f5 in the future. That knight in. Okay. Well, now I kind of want to play this knight back and maybe go for f4 later. But now let's keep it simple. Takes with a pawn. Okay, bring this up. That knight in. So now I want to get rid of this knight, but if they take, they've got a pair of powerful pawns in the center. But maybe take knight f5 is pesky. They have queen e5 though. Okay, so let's do this move first of all. Maybe queen d1 to g4 is a helpful plan. If bishop c8, I have knight e7 check, and I might even come to c6 or just take the light square bishop. This is a bad piece for me, my light square bishop. But for the moment, I'm not too concerned. Okay, so I think they really want to go after f2, don't they? I can take and play e5. It's intriguing, but I would feel better if my queen was over here. So that's what I'm going to do. I have 1 minute left, and the position's very complicated still, so let's hurry. I don't know if I should let this knight survive much longer. I maybe should have taken it on the previous move. Okay, so now let's take and then play e5. This works tactically because they can't take on d5 because I take. If bishop takes, queen takes, knight e7 at the end, which is a nice line. This knight might be bound for d6. This just looks correct. I mean, bring in my e and my d pawns. Invite them to the party. Queen g4 is coming soon. This could be a nightmare to defend for black. I'm just worried about the time. See what they do. I've got my dinosaur cup. You know it's going to be a good day when you got the dinosaur cup. Taking f2 doesn't work. Take queen b6. I easily refute that. Something like king f1. I like the fact that he is pausing to think. So he's offering me this pawn, but I kind of get sidetracked if I do that. So let's do this instead. That knight is well placed on d6. I very much like it there. Maybe queen f3 next move after they tend to the bishop. We're not stopping this train just for one little pawn. If queen g5, I might have knight e4 to f6 check. Little reroute. Probably queen h4. Okay, so he's going to go there, actually. But, yeah, let's do this. Attack that queen. Oh, they can just do that. I didn't see that move. Did not see that possibility. Okay, so let's go here. Just get behind. b2 is hanging. Whoops. All right, got to push this pawn. Try to make something happen. All right, let's do this. We're going after b7. Try to create some problems, right? Let's go b3. Look to swap here. They might go after d7, but I can't really worry about that right now with 27 seconds left. I think he's very aware of the time, too. Okay, let's do this. I mean, we've got a pretty strong pawn on d7. I definitely like that. Okay, so let's do this. Maybe I can just bring my rook into d8, actually. Like so. Problem is this time, right? It's much harder for him to make a move than me, though. His king can't really move, I think is his biggest issue. Oh, he could have taken on e8 right there. I'm really glad he didn't. I'm going to try to put him in zugzwang now. Like, what can he really do? Especially now. Yeah, now he's stuck. Now he's got to do something radical. Let's just take that. Going for the checkmate net. Okay. Let's bring this baby back. All right, we won on time. Well, that was anyone's game right at the end. I was not feeling good after he took my pawn on e5. I just straight out dropped that pawn. Knight e4, didn't even see queen takes e5. It turned out all right, but I'm sure that black is out of the woods at that stage once they take that pawn. They missed a big chance in the time scramble. And it was right when my king crossed over to the d file. That could have been costly. So right here, it's an interesting position because he can't take either of my rooks. If he takes either one, I'm queening. So he's kind of stuck, but I'm also stuck because I don't want to take his rook on d8. He'll take with his bishop. So it's this bizarre position where the rooks are all zugzwanging each other, if you will. So as soon as I played king d3, though, he could have played rook f takes e8, and my d pawn would have been pinned. So I would have just lost a rook for free and probably lost the game. But he was playing so quick that he didn't notice. I don't know if I technically have a win here, because if my king can't cross to the d file, then how do I get it up to f5? If I can get the king to f5, then he might be running out of moves. It's a strange situation, but yeah, despite white being down a pawn, my d pawn controls matters so heavily here. So let's go back and take a look. This guy was a player indeed. He really brought it. So this is the main line with bishop a4, as opposed to taking on c6, as you've seen me play before. And then this is a active way of playing the Ruy Lopez. I always forget what they call this. It's like the classical variation or the Archangelsk variation when they put the bishop on b7. The nomenclature of openings, especially complicated openings like the Ruy Lopez, is confusing because there's so many variations and sub-variations. So I played for d4 and then h3. Not sure that move is even necessary, but I just wanted to rule out bishop g4. Bishop g4 could be helpful for black because if they can generate pressure on f3, they also generate pressure on d4 as well. So let me just flick on the engine right here. Yeah, the engine wants to play something else, but it would be more helpful to look in a database here or a book rather than relying on the engine. This is still opening theory territory, so I would much more trust a good database with games of higher rated players than me versus like just what the engine is saying. It's much more helpful to look at that human experience in a line. And here I played rook e1, bishop e3. So I thought this was a nice scenario where I get to bring the bishop to e3 without fear of knight takes e4 because of this familiar trick, bishop d5, forking the knights. Because otherwise it may be hard to coordinate my queenside development, because if ever I play knight bd2, then my queen is no longer assisting in defending d4. Now I would only have two defenders, the knight plus the pawn, and black has three attackers, pawn, knight, and bishop. So I didn't want to lose sight of that fact. So the ability to play bishop e3 first, developing and adding another defender to d4, and then bringing the knight in behind is huge. So that makes me think that maybe black should not have played h6. The engine wants to go bishop b7. That way knight takes e4 is a threat if bishop e3 is played. Yeah, it looks like black could do this. Maybe not. Oh, this time it's a little different. d5. Yeah, and if the knight moves, then the idea is bishop takes b6, and we're attacking the knight here. So maybe even in this case, white can get away with bishop e3. Yeah, if knight takes e4 is not working. But knight a5 is a good reply. Opening up the light square bishop on e4 and attacking my bishop. But black played h6. I mean, h6 is helpful because it stops bishop g5 or knight g5. But it does give me a chance to develop as I wished here. So now black took. They did play quite actively, though. I didn't see knight b4 attacking e4 and heading into d3 potentially. But queen b1 looks to be a good rejoinder. Yeah. As I said in the game, killing two birds with one stone, this move. We always like multi-purpose moves, right? Black played c5. I played a3, kicking him back. He had a time advantage after, let's say, 15, 20 moves, but the position was complex. Yeah, here I think taking on c5, advancing d5, maybe even playing e5, all of those are viable options. It's a position with a lot of tension, and the move I make with my d-pawn, or whatever move I make, will greatly determine the landscape of the middle game. Yeah, so e5 is now the top move according to the computer. I thought about that, I just wasn't sure. What if take here? Idea being take, and try to get at f2 with check, because this looks very good for black. I guess in this case, c takes d4, the engine wants to go bishop takes h6. Wow, and then if take here, I assume queen check. Note that the f-pawn is pinned. It's a nice little tactical detail. King h8, queen takes, knight h7, bishop c2, hello knight. And white has a huge attack, possibly a winning attack. Yeah, the Ruy Lopez is a rich opening. I have more experience from the black side in recent years, but I used to play this from the white side too. And it's no wonder that a lot of these top-level games throughout chess history and even now are taking place in the Ruy Lopez. It's such a durable opening. It stood the test of time, and many players are specialists on the white side and the black side of the variation. Like, take Magnus Carlsen, regularly plays white and black in the Ruy. But I played d5. Yeah, e5 looks like it could have been more tactically promising, but I closed the center, and in doing so, blocked this bishop. And now I started reorganizing my pieces, as you see in the Ruy Lopez quite often. In particular, this knight maneuver, either to g3 or e3, is common. And now, especially with a pawn on d5, blocking my own bishop, I need to get this bishop to a better diagonal. So that's why I played bishop c2. Knight d7. I played this to target d6. Yeah, just switch my bishop a little bit. I thought about playing g4, but that seemed like an overreaction. The point of g4 would be to discourage f5, but I don't fully trust it. It creates some weaknesses on my king side. So instead, bishop f4. And here, black can ignore that by virtue of the very nifty move c4. So I haven't done one of these for a while, but if you want a challenge, pause your video and try to figure out why c4 does not drop the d6 pawn, or why it's not dropping a pawn, I should say. So if c4, bishop takes d6, what happens? Okay, so the idea there is black is opening this bishop. So if bishop takes d6, they have the retort, bishop takes f2 check, forking my king and my rook. And then after I take, black gets queen b6 check in, forking the king and the bishop, and they successfully recover the piece. Probably with an advantage, because it looks like these pawns are stalled and weak. Note that I can't play e5 because I lose d5. Or maybe not. Maybe I have this. Maybe black moves their queen away and these pawns are just vulnerable regardless. d6, knight d5. Yeah, there's issues for white. So that's a subtle thing, the fact that black could play c4 and doing so threaten bishop takes f2 if I took on d6. So instead, black played queen b8. I thought this move looked strange. I mean, if you're going to use your queen to defend, why not go to c7? Maybe he wanted to keep that square free for his bishop. I don't know. So queen b8. I drop the bishop back. This reminds me of a Benoni pawn formation. We've got a similar type of thing going on. So I played the bishop back so that knight g6 does not come with a gain of time. That was my plan there. Then I started maneuvering this knight. I mean, position's still about equal. And it's a rich game. Now white's getting some edge. Yeah, knight d to e5 felt like it was rushed maybe. But I see the computer thinks it's fine. Maybe his issue was taking with the d-pawn. It says knight takes is better. so it doesn't like taking with the pawn. I think he's playing to keep the bishop on h2 out of play, minimize its impact on the diagonal, but in doing so, he gives me a protected passed pawn. So I played knight e3. It felt like my position was more comfortable now. Send the knight into f5. Often in the Ruy Lopez, this starts to create problems for black if white's knight gets here. It's especially problematic if my queen is participating. Like if I have my queen in the vicinity of like f3 and g4, because you know how strong a queen and a knight together can be. And if I got my queen to say g4, I'd be threatening mate on g7. c4. Yep, queen d1. So I felt good. I felt like I had played the opening pretty well, but the only problem is I had like a minute left at this stage to black's 2.5. Queen here, and now I decided to try to bulldoze with the pawns in the center. In this case, I think these pawns are strong compared to that other scenario I showed, because my knight helps out tactically, for one thing. Note that they cannot take on d5 because I have this nifty yet standard idea. Lure the queen out to d5 and then go in for the fork. And I'm winning a piece. And same thing if queen takes d5, he runs into knight e7. So now black is feeling the weight of these center pawns. He chose a good move according to the computer, g6. Offering me the h-pawn. But I thought if I took this, then my attack would slow down and I'd have to waste time saving my knight. And all I've won is a measly h-pawn, which shouldn't matter a whole lot. And then if I retreat, I would even lose d5. Yeah, now they come in and take with the queen, and black is better all of a sudden. So I didn't want to get sidelined, so I played knight d6. The engine wants to go e6. That's a cool move. It also says knight d6 is a move, but yeah, this is a candidate move as well. The idea there is that if black takes, we have e7, forking the queen and the rook. Queen takes d5, take the rook, say king takes, and white is somewhat better in the resulting endgame. Black has a minor piece plus a pawn for the rook and 2 bishops, but yeah, white certainly looks like the one pressing in this case. But being under a minute, I wanted to keep it straightforward, so knight d6 hitting the bishop on b7. But I will freely admit that I messed up the coming position. Yeah, so right here I just need a quieter move. Rook a d1 is good, and the engine already says white's position is bordering on decisive. I think I have just such great central control, and black has difficulties in the face of these 2 pawns and the knight, that I can afford to build up. I'm not sure what white is even threatening here yet. Maybe e6 at some stage. Yeah, like if bishop d7, I'm sure I would push e6, which maybe is possible even here. But it feels better with the rook participating as well, the other rook. But yeah, it's even possible here. Take, knight takes c8, rook takes, and come in with this rook, attacking the bishop and also threatening this. Rook f6, rook ae1, and white has a nice attack. Black's king is open. Yeah, opposite color bishops where one side is attacking, one side has a safe king, white, the other has an exposed king, black. But knight e4 on the other hand, big blunder. Queen takes e5. And now it was getting murky. I thought that black maybe should just take on b2 here. They chose to withdraw the queen and play it safe, but yeah, no reason they can't play queen takes b2. And I'm much worse according to the computer all of a sudden. Yeah, losing that e-pawn is huge. As played, however, I was able to go after their bishop on b7. I did not notice that queen takes f4 was possible, by the way. Either here or on the previous move. But I'm fortunate that my d-pawn turned out to be so strong. Bishop takes g6. No chance I find that in time pressure. How does that work? Bishop takes g6? Oh, because if f takes g6, then queen d5 check, and we're going to win the bishop on d4. And if queen takes g6, then rook takes d4. That is nifty. So this is the idea. Pick up the bishop. Or queen takes, rook takes d4. Probably only an engine is capable of finding that with 30 seconds on their clock. So I played b3 just trying to save the b-pawn. But now that d-pawn became a force. And I even opted to trade queens to try to prove it. I did not notice that rook takes d7 was possible here. A nice resource, because if queen takes, then queen takes e4. Bishop takes f7, rook takes, queen c8 check, king h7, take here, and black is up a pawn in the resulting heavy piece endgame. Yeah, too complicated for such little time. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because once we get the rook in like this, there is this sort of stalemate going on with the rooks arrayed on the back rank, but neither side wanting to be the first one to blink. I just wonder if it's winning for white. It's close to it according to the engine, +2, but that might not mean much. That's an acknowledgement that white is a lot better, but that's not completely decisive yet. Like, decisive would be +4, +5, +6. Sometimes +2 is decisive, but in an endgame, if the eval is usually not increasing after you play a few moves, then that's a sign that the computer doesn't see how to actually convert the endgame advantage. So just to recap, black cannot take on, let's say back here, black cannot take on c8 because we're queening this way. They cannot take on e8 like that for the same reason. And same thing here. They take this way, we're queening, and they'd have to give up their rook. Meanwhile, if I take on d8, then they're taking with the bishop, and this rook still guards. And if I take on f8, then he takes with the king, and again, the bishop is holding. And I don't want to just unnecessarily exchange, right? So my plan with the limited time I had to figure it out was to try to bring up my king to f5. Because black's king is kind of overloaded. It's having to defend f8, and if my king gets up to f5, it would have to defend the bishop too. And that bishop doesn't have a lot of good squares. Like e7 is covered by my rook. And if it goes all the way to h4, I might have a pawn on g4 that I can push to g5. And then all of a sudden, this rook would be hanging. Still, though, I'm not sure it's winning. And as played in the game, after bishop g5, king d3, black had a chance to completely reverse the result of the game with this, and my d-pawn is sadly pinned. So how can I get my king to f5 if black just keeps the bishop here? Bishop g5 was a good move. I can't come up this way. I can't cross to the d-file, so I don't see how I do it. I mean, I could fiddle around, like, yeah, I could play the rook back to c5 and try a different angle of attack. Just leave this here. So white can certainly press, but I don't know that it's a win. Once I sneak my king in, though, yeah, now it looks to be winning. +4 all of a sudden. You see how that eval jumped? Now the computer is starting to believe that white can actually make use of that +2 advantage. Yeah, it's just a zugzwang. If bishop f6, I can take on f8. And if king takes, we take here. Black can resign. If rook takes, then we take again, and once more. Win the bishop at the end, queen the pawn. So what is black to do? There's nothing. Best move is bishop e7, just allowing rook takes. And that should be a win for white. Take, I would think. I only have one pawn left, but I would think that this is a win. Yeah. So I found the correct idea, but it was not implemented in the best way because black had rook takes e8. But still intriguing to see how black eventually loses a position like this. They're just stuck. So what did black do? They played bishop f6, and I took g4. That was unnecessary. Yeah, I could have just taken f8. It's probably still winning, though. Yeah, I advanced my pawn. Now the bishop is no longer participating here. So, yeah, this didn't spoil anything, fortunately. Could black have played after g5? Bishop takes g5? Yeah, this doesn't matter either. Because even though they could eliminate my last pawn, they're going to be down too much material. And I won the time scramble. So very rich game. This was a fun one. And I got to say, I've been playing e4 for about a week now, just off and on. I think almost entirely in my Blitz games. And my record's been really good with e4. So I'm considering playing this more often. I don't know if I'll start playing it in tournaments anytime soon, that would take some work. But I think this kind of shows that whatever opening you play, a chess game is always a chess game, right? You can talk about opening theory and how that jives with your style, but at the end of the day, like e4 is just a good move for white, even though stylistically it's different than positions I'm used to as a d4 player or playing knight f3 on move 1. That's not to say that I can't play them. So I'm going to keep it up and see what kind of results I can achieve or continue to achieve with e4. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this game and this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Talk to you guys later. Bye.